Big news today, people. We have a Google Core update rolling out right now. So it was announced on the 22nd of August. Today is the 23rd of August. And you can see that it's been announced on the search status dashboard. So we have the August Core 2023 Core update. This is actually the second update this year. There was one in March as well. So if you click on the links, you can see the details of the August one. And obviously, it's going to take about 2 weeks to roll out. Now, this was just announced 12 hours ago. So obviously, there's not really going to be much changes so far. And it's very early days to say anything. But it'll be interesting to see how this rolls out. And if you do see any volatility in your rankings, well, you know why. You might also wonder, what is a core update? Let's look at Google's guidelines on that. The main thing to note here is that a core update is typically just a whole all-round update to Google's algorithm, right? So it's not like it's targeting one particular change. And it's not like if you get penalized now, your website has done anything wrong necessarily. As they say, pages that experience a change after a core update don't have anything wrong to fix. It's very, very general, but basically focus on offering the best content you can. And what I would say here is if you do experience a drop, you don't need to panic as always. You wait for the algorithm update to roll out completely, might be a couple of weeks. Even then, it's going to be very early to tell, make any major changes. And definitely don't do anything drastic here. Don't panic. That's the main thing here. Now, despite the advice being quite general on the core update page, one of the best things to do is audit the pages that have dropped, right? So Google recommend this as well. If you haven't seen my other videos on how to do that, let me show you. So I have a free tutorial here on basically how to go over your previous Google Search Console rankings, see which pages have dropped, and then audit those pages and figure out, okay, what do I need to improve? If you do take a big hit during a core update, typically you have to wait until the next core update to recover from that. And these typically happen like every few months. So there was one in March, now there's one in August. But yeah, if you take a hit or if your website takes an improvement, typically you see a trajectory and you'll follow that trajectory until the next core update. And that is the fourth update of the year, two of them being core updates already. If we check SEMrush's sensor, we can see that the SERP volatility for the last 30 days is super high. It's 9.1. And you can see for the last few days, the SERP volatility has been between 9.3 on Friday and 9.1, which is super high. This is ranked from 0 to 10. Now, if you actually go on SEMrush, I don't have a paid account. This is completely free. But what you can do is type in your domain. So, for example, let's say chipperbirds.com, and then you can monitor the personal score for your projects, right? So if you want to see what the volatility of your website is like across the next 2 weeks, I think you can do it here. So you just hit try it like that. And then you can plug in your country details. You can put your main keywords in there, hit start tracking. So this tool is quite interesting to see, okay, what is the impact of core updates? What's going to happen over the next few days? Which industries are getting hit? And who are the biggest winners and losers? Obviously, these are going to be massive websites, right? But if you look down the list, you can see, okay, which websites have taken the biggest hit. But as you can see right now, it is essentially a Google quake, as they call it. You might also wonder, when was this rolled out? So this was announced yesterday. Some people feel it was rolled out even earlier. I mean, you can see the SERP volatility a few days before. And Google actually have these guidelines on the website. It talks about August 2019, but basically every core update is very similar. And they're all targeting the same sort of things. But they're more about overall changes rather than one particular quick fix. So like they mentioned, if your site experiences a drop, you're probably looking for a fix, but you want to ensure that you don't try and fix the wrong things that actually don't correlate to the changes and then make things worse for your site. So you got to be careful with that. Wait for it to roll out. Don't panic. They do have a bunch of actionable questions you can ask yourself, as you can see right here. So for example, it's got ideas on content and quality questions, like does the content provide original information, reporting, research or analysis, or expertise questions. You also got details on presentation and production questions. So, for example, does the content have any spelling or stylistic issues? Was the content produced well? And I think this is one of the most important set of questions, right? Does the content provide substantial value versus your competitors? And like I always say, the best way to figure out, okay, how do you rank your content is to look at what's already ranking and figure out what's working for your competitors, because then you can bridge the gap. And then finally, there's some details on EEAT. Now, what's interesting is EAT has been a big thing this year. It stands for expertise, experience, authority, and trust. And a lot of websites, they're using personas. So, for example, like this test website here, you got the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Birdman, Dale Garrett, right? And it'll be interesting to see how this Google Core Update impacts websites with a persona, because this has been such a big thing this year. And a lot of people have talked about how expertise, experience, authority, and trust is really important on websites. Other people have said it's BS and that it all comes down to backlinks instead. This core update, potentially, we could see some changes in that, but who knows? Very early to say. I don't think the data will be fully out until a couple of months after in terms of what actually impacted things. If you actually look at this test website, chipperbirds.com, and you look at the rankings since the last update in March, the trajectory for it has been really good. And you can see the search impressions for this website just going up exponentially. Be really interesting to see what happens next for this website, because a lot of the content is created with AI. And with so much AI content being produced out there, it's going to be crazy to see, okay, what happens next in terms of AI? And will that improve content quality ratings in Google's core update? Or is it going to have a negative impact? And no one really knows the answer. But what I can say is that quite often AI content is better than human written content. So let's see. If I actually look at the rankings for cheaperbirds.com, obviously it's very early days, but let's see if any rankings have dropped. So you can see there's a few pages that have dropped in traffic, but not by a massive amount. And they're still on the first page if we compare today versus last week. But like I say, it's probably too early to see any data or to see any drops in content. And if we filter down by positive changes, you can see that actually a lot of rankings have gone up, right? So these keywords, if we compare today versus say this time last week, a lot of keywords have moved to the number one position since making these changes. So be really interesting to see what happens next. Now, aside from everything else, what can you do after a core update if, say, your website gets hit? Well, what I've done is taken the guidelines from Google, plug them into ChatGPT, and then basically asked for step-by-step instructions for auditing a site after a core update. Basically, it gives you a list of step-by-step things you can do to look through your website and check your site out. So, for example, it could be content and quality updates, assessing the expertise and the information on your website, checking presentation, comparing it versus your competitors in a comparative evaluation, auditing your website for EEAT, and also manage your expectations in terms of timelines, right? Because even if you make all of these changes after a core update, you might not see any recovery in traffic until after the next broad core update. So be aware of that. And on top of that, be very wary of any analyses that explain the correlations right now between ranking factors and Google's core update. So a lot of people will come out with their own hypotheses. The only problem is that number one, it requires a lot of data, more than most people have access to. So there's only very few people that can actually do that. And additionally, it doesn't just require the data, but it requires an insightful analysis of that data, right? And that's a separate skill in itself. And it might take a few months or a few weeks to get any relevant data on the core update and the ranking factors. So thanks so much for watching. Still early days on that. If you do want to book in a call about how to get more leads, traffic, and sales from SEO, feel free to book that in. And if you want access to my free ChatGPT AI SEO course, the 2x my traffic in 11 days, then feel free to get that. I'll leave a link in the comments. Thanks so much for watching.